Disowned for getting pregnant at 14. Love don't judge. I still remember the day my world shattered. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, my hands trembling as I stared at the pregnancy test in disbelief. 2 pink lines, positive. My heart pounded in my chest as 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. What am I going to do? How am I going to tell my parents? I was only 14, a freshman in high school. I had dreams of becoming a nurse, traveling the world, and making my family proud. But in that moment, all of those dreams seemed to vanish. I knew my parents wouldn't take the news well. My father was strict, my mother deeply religious. I had seen how they reacted when my cousin got pregnant at 16. They called her an embarrassment, a disgrace to the family. She had to move in with an aunt because her parents wouldn't let her stay. That night, I couldn't sleep. My hands rested on my still flat stomach, wondering what life would be like from now on. Would I even be allowed to stay in school? Would my parents kick me out like they did my cousin? I prayed for a miracle, for some way to make everything okay. The next morning, I knew I couldn't keep it a secret for long. My body would betray me eventually. I decided to tell my mother first. She had always been the softer one, the peacemaker in our home. Maybe, just maybe, she'd help me figure things out. I waited until she was in the kitchen, cooking breakfast. My father had already left for work, so it was just the two of us. I took a deep breath, my fingers gripping the hem of my hoodie. "Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She turned, a smile on her face, but it quickly faded when she saw the look in my eyes. "What's wrong, Mija?" I swallowed hard. "I need to tell you something." She wiped her hands on a dish towel and motioned for me to sit. "Okay, tell me." I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat. My vision blurred with tears, and before I could stop myself, I blurted, "I'm pregnant." Silence, the kind that makes your skin crawl. My mother just stared at me, her face unreadable. Then, she let out a breath, shaking her head. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." I could see the panic in her eyes, the way her hands trembled. "Please, Mom," Before I could finish, she slapped the table so hard I jumped. "Do you know what you've done? Do you have any idea what this means for our family?" Tears spilled down my cheeks. I didn't mean for this to happen. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. When she looked up at me again, her expression had hardened. "You have to tell your father." My stomach dropped. "No, please, not yet." But she didn't listen. That night, after dinner, she told him. My father's face turned red with anger. "You disgraced this family," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "I raised you better than this." "I'm sorry," I whispered, sobbing. He didn't care. His next words shattered me. "Get out." I froze. "What?" "You heard me," he said. "You made your choice. Now live with it." I turned to my mother, begging with my eyes, but she wouldn't even look at me. My little brother, who was only 9, watched with wide, confused eyes. I wanted to hug him, to tell him I loved him, but my father wouldn't give me the chance. "Go," he repeated, his voice like ice. And just like that, I was homeless. I stayed at a friend's house for a few days, but her parents said I couldn't stay long. They were kind, but they had their own struggles. The father of my baby Daniel was only 15, and his parents refused to help. They said we were too young, that I should take care of it, but I couldn't. No matter how scared I was, I couldn't do that. Eventually, I found a shelter for teen mothers. It wasn't home, but at least I had a bed, food, and people who understood what I was going through. The first night there, I cried myself to sleep. I missed my family, my bed, my mom's cooking, but I had to be strong for my baby. Over the next few months, I kept going to school, even when morning sickness made it nearly impossible. I worked small jobs after school to save money. The other girls at the shelter became like sisters to me. We supported each other, shared our fears and hopes. Some days were unbearable, but I refused to give up. I wanted to prove everyone wrong. But then, at 5 months pregnant, something happened that changed everything. To be continued.